admissions policies and
With
using
respect,
race as a crude proxy for discrimination.
That's not the question I asked you. Are the race-neutral policies praised by Justice Thomas now considered by you to be illegal DEI?
I think you're mixing apples and oranges, so
well,
I can't really answer your question.
You can answer my question and say,
what's up, patriots? Welcome back to the channel, where we stand up for the Constitution, for American values, and for the truth, no matter how hard the mainstream wants to silence us. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because we don't hold back. Today, I want to react to something that absolutely blew my mind. An explosive Senate hearing where a courageous senator grilled a DOJ official, Mr. Dillon, about the Department of Justice's latest attack on academic freedom and merit in America. This time, it's the University of California in the crosshairs, and folks, it's about way more than just hiring policies. This is about the future of higher education, free speech, and whether the federal government can bully every institution in America into submission. Let's break down what went down, and then I'll give you my unfiltered take.
Launching an investigation into the University of California over its UC 2030 capacity plan, which notes that future growth of faculty and students should result in campus populations that better reflect and tap the talent of underrepresented populations who represent the majority of Californians. In the SFA versus Harvard opinion, the Supreme Court held that nothing in this opinion should be construed as prohibiting universities from considering an applicant's discussion of how race affected his or her life, be it through discrimination, inspiration, or otherwise, allowing universities to continue assessing students' experience with race on an individualized basis. In that opinion, in his concurrence, Justice Thomas praised the University of California for achieving diversity through race-neutral policies, including preferences for low-income applicants and first-generation students, and recruiting efforts targeted at areas with substantial populations of people of color. Are the race-neutral policies like those used by University of California, which Justice Thomas explicitly praised in that opinion, now considered by you to be illegal DEI?
Well, Senator, first of all, the investigation that we've opened is an investigation, and it's an investigation into the hiring policies of the University of California system, not the admissions policies. That said, I have absolutely seen abuses in the admissions policies in using race as a crude proxy for discrimination.
That's not the question I asked you. Are the race-neutral policies praised by Justice Thomas now considered by you to be illegal DEI?
I think you're mixing apples and oranges, so I can't really answer your question.
You can answer my question and say, yes, they are now illegal. That is what Justice Thomas praised in terms of race-neutral policies, which include preferences for low-income applicants, first-generation students, things like that. Are you now saying that what Justice Thomas praised is now illegal in your view?
Senator, there's a difference between what you see on paper and what you see in reality, and I reject your premise.
I'm not asking you about particular.
I reject your premise that how California describes its
practice.
admissions
I'm asking
practices
you about whether
reality.
you subscribe to the Supreme Court's opinion or whether you disagree with Justice Thomas' concurrence. You can answer that question, can't you?
In the abstract, yes. In reality, what you're describing does not exist in the UC system.
Okay, so Justice Thomas got it wrong. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that.
Well, you are saying that because he was praising the policies of the University of California. You seem to be saying now that any university that gives a preference to low-income applicants is engaged in illegal DEI, or if they put a focus on first-generation students, that's somehow impermissible. After all the years of criticism of cancel culture, you seem to want to cancel any institution that has views that you disagree with. In answer to the questions about law firms, you want to cancel law firms because they take on unpopular clients to you, to the administration. That is, if a firm represents someone with an adverse interest to the administration, which is their First Amendment right to do, and I would also say their duty to do, you would cancel them. You would cancel universities like Harvard or the University of Virginia that take positions and exercise their First Amendment rights contrary to what you think the administration wants to see. You would cancel the Associated Press for not using the ridiculous nomenclature of the Gulf of America. You're canceling now the Wall Street Journal because the Wall Street Journal had the audacity to publish an article about Trump's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. So this is what's going on in this administration. You've devastated the Civil Rights Division. Hundreds of attorneys, 368, have departed since January of this year. There's been a mass exodus from the Civil Rights Department. It is just a shell of what it used to be. They're being canceled. They're being canceled by you, by the department. Anyone that stands up to this president is at risk of being canceled. And I think what you're doing to use the sledgehammer of federal funding with universities to try to coerce them to accepting your right-wing agenda is disgraceful. And using that cudgel will have far-reaching implications, attacking research done by universities, academic independence done by universities. It will establish a dangerous precedent that can be abused by a president of any party, and we should recognize that on a bipartisan basis, even though it does not appear that we do. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So here's the setup. The DOJ recently launched an investigation into the University of California's so-called UC 2030 capacity plan. Now, on paper, this plan says it wants campus populations to better reflect the so-called underrepresented populations, basically the left's code for racial quotas, who are now the majority in California. But here's where it gets interesting. The senator points out that the Supreme Court's SFA v. Harvard decision, remember, that's the one banning explicit race-based admissions quotas, specifically allows universities to consider, on individual basis, how race affected students' life. In plain English, you can't just check a box for race, but you can talk about your experiences. Justice Thomas, God bless him, goes even further in his concurrence. He says the University of California is a model for what race-neutral diversity looks like. He praises their focus on low-income and first-generation students and their efforts to recruit from communities of color without using racial quotas. But what does the DOJ do? They launch an investigation into UC, not for admissions, but for hiring policies, claiming there's some kind of abuse going on. And when the senator presses Mr. Dillon, asking point-blank if the very race-neutral policies Justice Thomas praised are now illegal in the DOJ's eyes, the official wobbles. He dodges. He says, basically, well, it's different on paper than in reality, and refuses to answer the question. Let me stop right there. This is the playbook, folks. The left claims to be colorblind and race-neutral in public, but behind closed doors, they're still obsessed with bean counting, quotas, and social engineering. And when you call them out, they say, well, that's just on paper. It's not what's really happening. So which is it? Either you believe in treating people equally or you don't. Now, as a proud American, let me tell you what this all means. First, the Supreme Court has been clear. Racial quotas are illegal, and for good reason. They're un-American. They fly in the face of everything this country stands for: equal opportunity, not equal outcomes. But now, the DOJ is moving the goalposts. They're taking the power of federal funding, the taxpayers' money, and using it as a sledgehammer to threaten any institution that dares to step out of line with their radical agenda. And if you think this is just about California, you're not paying attention. This is a warning shot to every university, every law firm, every media outlet in America. Toe the line or get canceled. The senator is absolutely right. This is cancel culture on steroids. If you represent clients the administration doesn't like, if you publish stories they don't approve of, if you refuse to use their made-up language, you're next. Law firms? Targeted. Harvard, UVA? Targeted. Associated Press, Wall Street Journal? Targeted. And now, 368 attorneys have fled the DOJ's Civil Rights Division since January because they can't stand what's happening. Second, the left claims to care about diversity, but what they really want is conformity. They don't want diversity of thought. They want every institution to parrot the same woke talking points. If you dare to stand up for the First Amendment, for academic freedom, for the right to disagree, you get investigated, harassed, and driven out. Third, this is about power. The founders warned us about centralized power. They warned us against letting the federal government dictate how we live, work, learn, and think. That's why we have the First Amendment, the 10th Amendment, and all the rest. But today's left wants to erase those boundaries and turn every school, every newsroom, every law firm into an arm of the government. Patriots, this is the moment to stand up. We can't let the DOJ or any administration use the power of the purse to silence dissent. We can't let them erase academic independence and freedom of thought. We have to fight for a merit-based, colorblind society where every American, no matter where they come from, has the opportunity to rise. If you agree, share this video. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about the DOJ's investigation into UC, about the attack on civil rights attorneys, about cancel culture in government. And if you want to keep the fight going, make sure you're subscribed for more truth, more patriotism, and more standing up for America. God bless you. God bless our Constitution, and God bless the United States of America.